How cool would it be, though, if Warzag actually had a buff where the longer he was out of melee and stationary, aka dancing, he would actually gain, like, some spell mastery or something? I don't know. It would be super hilarious, but anyway, today, this replay from Cool Umbrella, specifically practicing Greenskins against some gyro cheese. So we got 4 gyrocopters here for the Dwarfs. Yeah. And a whole host of dwarf infantry over here. Looks like some Norgrimlings Ironbreakers, some regular Ironbreakers, miners with blasting charges, Thorek, of course, leading the way, a couple of Iron Drakes, Dragonback Slayers, Longbeards as well. And for the Greenskins, they're going to try and counter-skirmish with the Mangy Marauders here, armor-piercing Wolf Rider Archers, some Savage Orc Airboys as well, decent AP values on these, currently getting bombed out. Warzag, of course, leading the way. Giant River Troll Hag, and 3 Doom Divers, which is quite a bit of spend. Doom Divers are actually pretty good at shooting air units, but let's see, because of the tracking projectiles, they are pretty squishy though, and they're going to currently get steamed out, at least one of them. We've got some Squig Herds and Squig Hoppers mixed in, a couple of Black Orcs, including the Crimson Killas. So, yeah, all this counter skirmish here. Nice effigy to get there to just hard snipe one of those gyros. Keep in mind here, though, that it's like 2,800 points worth of gyrocopters, 3,000 points worth of Doom Divers. So if they trade evenly, that's going to be barely slightly in the favor of Dwarfs in terms of points. But, of course, that would require the Dwarfs to actually take out all 3 of the Doom Divers. Currently, they've got 1 off the field at the cost of 2 gyros already, which is pretty significant. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't think of the Greenskins as having armor-piercing missiles, but a lot of people don't realize, especially newer players, that Orc Airboys are essentially crossbowmen, right? They have similar AP values to, like, Jade Crossbowmen, Quarrelers, Crossbowmen for the Empire as well. Same thing, the Savage Orc Airboys, obviously, both Orc Archers are quite potent. That combined with any armor sundering effects, currently not brought, but obviously like the Rusty Airs, would help tear away some of that gyro's 100 armor. And gyros just have very low HP overall. It's not something you really think about too much in context, like kind of their stats, but they actually do have alarmingly low HP. It makes them exceptionally squishy, even against quote-unquote non-armor piercing attacks. But plenty of armor piercing damage to go around, as we have stipulated here. But currently, 1 Doom Diver been shut down. No, it looks like they're actually still online there. The banner's just bugging out a little bit and floating over a corpse. This other Doom Diver is just about offline, but 3 out of the 4 gyrocopters have been shut down. So let's fast forward a little bit and cue up the Benny Hill music as Warzag dances along. You've been seeing him dancing there in the background pretty much this whole time, and he is going to continue his jig as he watches his airboys bring down the last of that gyro in the distance. Just barely saw it floating down the hill there. And with this, the Dwarfs are going to be forced to advance. But again, value trade-wise, this is, I guess since 1 Doom Diver survived, this is in favor of the Greenskins. But the question is, will they be able to capitalize on this and win a decisive advantage in melee? This ground force of the Dwarfs is still quite scary. And currently, it looks like the Doom Diver is going to be targeted on the Norgrimlings Ironbreakers, which does make sense to a degree. I might try and target the Iron Drakes, just because if you like get 1 or 2 hits on them, that will kill most of the unit. So, you know, you can potentially take out a greater proportion of their stopping power, although certainly, again, the Ironbreaker is very expensive, very strong, very tanky. Even the Crimson Killas will struggle to deal with them effectively. Crimson Killas here now have an anti-infantry bonus, but in general, I feel like Black Orcs have kind of been underperforming recently. With some of the new elite infantry added into the game, like the buff to Swordmasters and some other stuff, they just have kind of fallen by the wayside. And even in situations where previously they would perform, for whatever reason, it seems like maybe they're not doing as well. But yeah, we'll see if they're able to potentially perform well in this battle. Currently, the Doom Diver's not really making much of an impact, and I mean, I guess at the end of the day, if the Doom Diver doesn't really do anything, then the trade will have been a wash more or less anyway. But let's see. Goblins falling, diving, flying from the sky, gliding ever so gently to their doom as they smash into some dwarfs, and do manage to take out at least a handful of those Ironbreakers. Some of the miners behind them as well on the overshot. Orc archers come forward as the camera wigs out a little bit there. And they're going to start firing in on these unshielded units. The Slayers would definitely be a great target for these archers to shoot at. But even the Iron Drakes, I mean, again, 125 armor will shrug off quite a bit of that damage, but relatively low HP overall. That archer fire would do quite a bit of damage to them. Doom Divers continuing to rain in, though, and again, chewing off a few models of those Nora Gremlings Iron Breakers. They've got them down to about 80 unit models, but that's still quite a bit. A normal unit of Iron Breakers is 100, so that extra unit models there just helping them kind of tank that extra damage. It looks like the Mangy Marauders have used up all their ammunition, and I say, you know, comparing the value trade of the Doom Divers to the Gyros, but the other thing to consider is actually that the Mangy Marauders did use up most of their value as well in that fight, considering they used most of their ammunition. The Orc Air Boys certainly still have enough ammunition to contribute throughout the rest of the battle, but yeah, I mean, I guess when I now math it out, considering the Mangy Marauders, it's basically an even trade still. The Gyros versus the Greenskins skirmish. Royal Goblin Air Force, I guess not necessarily royal, but Gobbo Air Force nonetheless. Currently has prevailed, but will continue raining down. Another couple of impacts there on the Nora Gremlings, taking out a handful more of their unit models, but really, I mean, their leadership is so high, and they still have plenty of unit models online. 79 melee defense. Be able to hold out for quite some time still. Nice to see the Squigs rush in, though, and prevent the remaining blasting charges from being thrown. Unlike this other unit here, which looks like is going to get a clean volley on the Crimson Killers. Wasn't quite clean. For whatever reason, they undershot. Oh, looks like these Doom Divers actually blocked some of the blasting charges there from getting a full contact. But, oh, man, on the second volley, plus the fire and flames of the Iron Drakes, it certainly looks bad, but the Crimson Killers are able to shrug off quite a bit of that damage due to their armor. The Night Goblin Squig Hoppers collapse fairly effectively here. The initial Squig Herds YOLO'd in. Didn't do all that much damage except to the miners, but Rune of Doom is popped in a very timely way. Give that nice melee attack buff up to 58 on these Iron Breakers, which is just massive. We're going to see a big foot of Gork here as well. Check the damage. It's not too crazy considering the Winds of Magic spent on that. I think it would have been a lot better actually to just go with melee attack buffs rather than AoE magic damage here. For Cool Umbrella, just go with Here We Go and Fists of Gork so that you can juice up your units, be able to get through the high melee defense of the Dwarfs rather than trying to deal magic damage to them, considering the magic damage is less effective. Plus, I mean, if you're spamming Fists of Gork especially will give you most possible casts of Bonewood Staff. So, not to mention, something that a lot of people forget, especially players of older Total War, where, you know, Total War Warhammer 1 and 2, you didn't want to take magic damage against the Dwarfs because they had straight-up magic resistance. Now, that is not the case. I mean, you don't want to take magic damage for your units, right? Not necessarily AoE magic damage spells, like, you know, Fists of Gork obviously imbues magic damage to the unit that it buffs, which is what I'm talking about. The reason being is that Thorek Ironbrow, who's pretty much an auto-pick for the Dwarfs, not only has 120 armor, but 25% physical resistance as well on his anvil, which is a huge amount. And not to mention, you know, there's a handful of other high-value units like Dragonback Slayers that also come with physical resistance that are particularly on this battlefield here. Yeah, some physical resistance on those Dragonback Slayers. So the magic damage, you know, imbuement on a buff, like with Fist of Gork, can be very important for taking out those high-value targets with that physical resistance. And it's definitely something you would want to do now. Not something I would advise previously, but definitely these days it would be quite beneficial. And like these Black Orcs too, with some more melee attack buffs, probably could have cut through those Iron Breakers already. But Wurzag having to pull back here. He's less vulnerable on foot against the Dwarfs than most other factions, but still has to be careful not to get sniped or roasted. He's going to pull back and resume dancing here. Unfortunately, he doesn't get any power from it, like I mentioned. I really want that to be a thing. But anyway, hopefully some modder will make that someday, where he just gets a buff for dancing. But anyway, the few Iron Drakes that do remain, even though there's only a handful of unit models still online, they are dishing a significant amount of damage here. Not only that, they're also providing that burnt leadership debuff, which is quite impactful on those lower leadership Greenskins units. A nice Rune of Wrath and Ruin also just blasts straight through the center of those Crimson Killers. Another Rune of Doom being popped as well, now fading. But yeah, Wurzag unfortunately does get caught in the Dragonback Slayers. They're going to make him weak to fire. He gets blasted by the Iron Drake's little extra, drops a nice foot of Gork there, and is going to try and flee. But the speed debuff from the Dragonback Slayers as well is enough to keep his green feet plodding along slowly. They can definitely continue to catch him, and likely to finish him off here. Yeah, only 51 HP. That's like 1 or 2 attacks. There goes Dragonback Slayers. Managed to fell him right before being mown down by arrows. But it looks like the Orc Airboys and Savage Orc Airboys actually did end up running out of ammunition there. So the ammo that they spent shooting the gyros does come into play, considering how close this late game is. That extra ammunition could have gone a long way into shooting these Iron Breakers and such. But, oh man, look at the one Iron Drake with 16 HP. True hero of the Dawi. Literally, like, bleeding out right now. Is he going to fire? That's the question. He has an order to fire, but he is actually line of sight blocked right now. So, looks like he's going to get charged by those Orc Airboys and finished off. Oh, well. True hero of the Dawi nonetheless. Some blasting charges going off in the background. Ironbreakers throwing the last of theirs. Thorak Ironbrow getting surrounded by Black Orcs. Has high enough melee defense to just be able to resist their attacks. And I think one thing they could do to buff Black Orcs would just be to increase their base melee attack a little bit, so that they can actually make use of that high weapon strength without being quite so reliant on buffs. Certainly with buffs, they are very good. And Greenskins does have an extreme capacity for melee attack buffs, but even still, you know, WA being what it is, and yeah, I mean, even with, you know, Bonewood Staff in this particular battle, I mean, I guess a lot of the Winds of Magic, like I said, were used on the bigger, more expensive damage spells, which ended up being not quite so impactful, but now WA is popped up to 74 melee attack, and now with that 8 bonus versus infantry, that's 80 plus, yeah, to get through high melee defense here. Unfortunately, they're not engaged on, I guess, yeah, it looks like the Norgrimlings actually did get fully finished off there, which is pretty surprising, but Dwarfs will continue to hold there. You can see Thorak Ironbrow in the background just blasting out another Rune of Wrath and Ruin. The low leadership of the Savage Orcs and these other units with the loss of their Lord here with WARZAG going down. That is going to be a pretty critical issue, that even this one Dragonback Slayer with 28 HP can rout that entire unit of Savage Orc Airboys and keep them running off the battlefield. So some odd leadership interactions, but Crimson Kill is going to pull out and charge. This is actually pretty smart to take advantage of their charge bonus, which is pretty high for infantry, certainly. 35 charge bonus is absolutely massive. That puts them up to 85 melee attack on the charge. So taking advantage of that as much as possible is tricky, considering how slow Black Orcs are, but their smart usage of that to be able to completely wreck that Ironbreaker, finish them off, and now get a nice full surround on Thorak himself. He's got his one Slayer mixed in here as well somehow still. The story is really about this one Slayer just like standing toe-to-toe, shoulder-to-shoulder with the Shield Bearers, Anvil Bearers, if you will. Did he just die? Yep, looks like he's done. No, he's getting back up. Come on, Slayer, bro. Keep fighting. He's just going to continue to hold. And the thing is, too... Oh, no, he's dead. He probably was providing a little bit of that debuff if he would have been able to make contact with anything here. But the River Troll Hag starts to lose out on her leadership. The Crimson Killers are getting some hits in the surround here, but Thorak is just so tanky. Like I said, that physical resistance does mean that even with that high armor-piercing damage, these Black Orcs are still going to struggle to output a sufficient enough amount of damage to finish off his leadership. Considering he has very high leadership as well, and we now have some Ironbreakers and Longbeards coming in for a rear charge, and this rear charge penalty could be enough to actually rout the Crimson Killers, which I would imagine would be enough to actually just finish off the Greenskins leadership entirely. I might have countercharged them with the Savage Orcs. The Savage Orcs also have a decent enough charge bonus. With that, they maybe could have mopped up the last of their unit models there, but it looks like the other Black Orcs are now collapsing back in once again. We'll fast forward a little bit through Thorak's final stand as he kind of dukes it out, but a beautiful Rune of Wrath and Ruin there just blasts that whole blob of orcs. And arguably one reason why you maybe shouldn't overblob like this in the end game. I mean, certainly you want to have as many units as you can contributing, but like maybe could have hung back with one of the Black Orcs, one of the archers, and just let the other two engage for the time being. But yeah, despite the balance of power showing in favor of the Greenskins, all of their units are wavering. and it looks like they may just suffer from an extraordinary chain route. Looks like they do with the Troll Hag just running away there. So Greenskins leadership going to be Greenskins leadership. Comes back to bite him in the end there, but an excellent game nonetheless. I do think a couple of minor mistakes from Cool Umbrella ended up costing him this, but he definitely had the tools he needed to win. And that initial execution was pretty good. I mean, being able to take out the gyros while suffering relatively minimal losses. Only 2 of the gyrocopters paid for themselves, really. But then in the infantry fight, Thorek is just so scary. I feel like you need to be able to dedicate some more resources to taking him out specifically. And Fists of Gork is a great way of doing that. You know, Fists of Gork, even on Warzag himself, on the River Troll Hag, or, you know, whatever has him in a surround, like those Black Orcs on a couple of occasions, definitely could have contributed quite nicely here. Yeah, both the Black Orcs do a decent job, but again, I think they were a little bit too expensive. This is kind of almost an ideal situation for them as well, fighting a lot of armored dwarf infantry. I mean, certainly Ironbreakers are on their tier, so I would expect that to be a relatively even battle, but Longbeards are well below, and certainly Miners and these other units are as well, so I kind of would expect the Black Orcs to perform a little bit better. And unfortunately, they did not. I think they just need to be a little bit cheaper, honestly, and maybe, again, I don't know. Maybe just cheaper is the best solution, to be honest, for them. But anyway, the rest of the army here, lots of stuff pays for itself. Great job by the Mangy Marauders, outvaluing the gyros there. Archers also do a great job. Arguably, maybe you just want more of them. But like I said, the build as it was probably could have worked. The only thing I really think is advisable to change is the spell selection here. But nonetheless, for the Dwarfs, Ironbreakers perform quite nicely. The Gyros, like I said, a little bit of a mixed bag, but they at least trade close to even. The blasting charges and the Iron Drakes don't do a lot, but the leadership damage is enough to help win some key engagements there at the end. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.